Development comes mostly packaged in the form of projects, and that has lots of benefits. We have measurable results, we have costed outcomes, we have concrete timelines. But there are also challenges associated with a project approach, and those are related mostly to achieving scale and ensuring sustainability. This has led to a growing recognition that interventions should be judged not only by the impact they have on their specific beneficiaries, but also by the potential to generate outcomes that match the scale of the need and that can be sustained over time. With very few exceptions, there are really only two platforms that can deliver sustainably at scale. That's governments and markets. Philanthropy and development assistance can't do it, but philanthropy and development assistance can take on the role of encouraging and helping permanent changes in the way governments and markets do the things that they do. I've spent much of the last 20 years preoccupied with large system change, and particularly about what third parties can do to help to encourage that change. That includes, in my case, working with about 300 different interventions that we're trying to reach scale, and it also involves curating a community of practice of others like myself who are very committed to this issue of scale and how to bring it about. That's been a wonderful way to spend part of my career, but it's also been a very sobering experience. And I want to share with you just a couple of insights that have come out of that. One, for example, is that only 1 in 20 interventions that are judged to have been successful at the pilot phase ever reaches national scale. Another important insight is that most people's ability to conceptualize complexity far exceeds our ability to manage that complexity. And a related observation is that even small system changes on large platforms usually involve a vast number of moving parts. Especially when projects are seeking proof of concept, the natural human tendency is to add additional features to the intervention if doing so improves efficacy or we think it will. Think, for example, of an early childhood education project that decides to add components on nutrition, parenting, and hygiene, and maybe also goes on to add elements on mentoring, targeted subsidy, and teacher recognition. At the project level, this might work well and produce an incredibly powerful result. But now imagine that same intervention being introduced into a bureaucratic system or a large market system, and realize that each of those additions comes with its own complications. Take, for example, South Africa, where there's a supportive national policy on ECD, a subsidy system that covers a small but significant portion of the eligible children and that pays 1/3 of the cost of center-based care. A total of 40,000 operators, some of whom are organized into several high-quality social franchises. Responsibility spread across 3 ministries and divided between national and provincial governments. And of course, 5 million kids in desperate need of the support that these systems provide. Now imagine the process of scaling sustainable changes that included all of these elements trying to find their home in this larger system. That's why some of us have become fond of saying that the process of successful scaling is best seen as a game of subtraction, not a game of addition. For a visual representation, think about the children's game of Jenga, where the challenge is to pull out everything you can and to simplify radically. Some argue, correctly I think, that sometimes it's not possible to attack one element of a problem without attacking the whole problem. While that may sometimes be unavoidable, one thing I'm sure of is that it comes at a cost in terms of the ability to reach and sustain scale. Said a different way, if it's possible to reduce the unit cost and the complexity of an intervention by 1/2 and still get 80% of the benefits, I say that's a good deal and a deal worth taking. And sometimes interconnectedness can actually be an asset. Just as some people think of interdependence in terms of the weakest link, you could also think of it as a virtuous cycle. What do I mean by that? Instead of saying we need to do everything to do anything, we could say that everything is a possible entry point. No matter where you begin, remember this, that planning for scale involves thinking through all of the changes required to integrate an improvement into a large platform, government and/or markets, that requires thinking about the actions needed to bring about the changes and the prospects for achieving each of those actions. And remember that the general rule of thumb should be, the fewer and smaller the changes, the better the chances.